So I knew my junior year of high school that I wanted to be, or I thought I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. And my mom is a teacher, and she told me very early on that MSU had one of the best teaching programs in the country. And I knew I had the GPA for it, and that was really it. I went on a visit the summer between my junior and senior year at MSU, and just walking around on campus and seeing all the really cool old buildings and all the students who are still there on campus, and they looked like they were having a good time. I just knew that MSU was the school. Sometimes we talk about when you go on a college visit, there's this moment where you can see yourself being successful at that school, and I had that moment at MSU. So I applied to MSU and also Central Michigan University, with CMU being my backup, but I really only ever wanted to go to MSU. Sort of changed my major starting in the fall of 2009. When I started college, I thought I wanted to be a high school history teacher. I loved all my high school history teachers, and I was very interested in history. It was my favorite subject, and I enjoyed taking those classes when I was in college too. However, at MSU, they have you do a lot of classroom experiences, and I did a lot of volunteering in my mom's elementary school back in my hometown. And I started doing more with elementary kids, and I started doing a lot of shadowing and classroom experiences with a special education resource room teacher who worked with kindergarten through fifth graders in a small group setting. And she did a lot of one-on-one work to help students with some kind of a learning disability or other kinds of disabilities. And I fell in love with doing that work. So starting in the fall of 2010, I changed my major to special education for learning disabilities. I also joined, while I was in college, the Global Educators Cohort program at MSU. And it taught me more about how to teach a more global classroom and how to work with a more diverse population within a classroom, something that I hadn't been exposed to in my hometown. No, I did not. So I graduated in 2013 with my bachelor's of arts in special education for learning disabilities. At MSU, you do a year of student teaching, and I went in and did my year of student teaching, and I had great teachers, but I very quickly learned that teaching itself was not what I was passionate about. I'm very passionate about education and making sure that all students have equitable access to a quality education, but teaching was not the right fit for me. So I finished my student teaching year and decided I did not want to be a teacher. But I knew I had this like passion for education. And luckily I found the MSU College Advising Corps, where I worked in a high school. I actually worked in Weberville and Waverly my first year. And I got the chance to work with high school students to help them figure out what their post-secondary path was. And that actually became more of my passion, helping students reach college and figuring out those pathways. So I learned very quickly that that was what I wanted to channel my passion into. And after I did 2 years with the College Advising Corps, I went to George Washington University out in DC and got my master's degree in higher education administration with a focus on policy and finance. The biggest hiccup or setback was definitely realizing I didn't want to be a teacher. That was a pretty devastating realization, but an important one because I ended up eventually finding the career path that was right for me. But that was a very difficult time trying to figure out like, oh my goodness, I have this degree, but I don't want to use it and how I'm supposed to use it. Even though but luckily I had a college degree that opened up a lot of other pathways for me. But that would probably have been my biggest hiccup. So while I was an undergrad, I was actually a resident assistant for 3 years. That meant that I worked I worked and I lived in the dorms, and I lived on a floor full of 40 to 50 girls each of those years. And I helped to make sure that they felt at home at MSU. I helped to make sure that they knew where resources were on campus. I was a listening ear if ever they were having kind of a tough time, and I helped in if there was emergencies or crises on the floor. I also had to monitor, make sure they were following housing policy. And it was really a fun job. It also helped me pay for my housing. So when you're an RA at MSU, at least at that time, I didn't have to pay for housing while I was an RA. So that made made the cost of college a lot less for me. But it was also just a really fun time. I was really good friends with a lot of the girls that were on my floor, and I also became really close friends with a lot of the other RAs. Some of them I'm still very close with today. I also had jobs while I was at MSU in addition to being an RA. My first year, I worked in a cafeteria, like serving and prepping and helping doing dishes. My second year, I was a barista, so I served coffee, which was a lot of fun. And then my last 2 years, I actually worked in the Office of Admissions at MSU, answering phones and helping students with application issues and stuff like that, which has come in handy in my job now, working with students to help them fill out applications. I would tell my younger self that there is no straight path to finding a job that you love, and that life is going to take a lot of twists and turns. And what you start off doing your freshman year of college, even though you think that that is the exact right path for you, is going to change. And that's okay. It's okay to encounter failure. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just gives you something to learn from. And it's okay to feel a little lost sometimes and not sure what you want to do. But there's always a ton of people there to help. So just stick with it and know that things do work out eventually.